Welcome, everyone, to Telos Reimagined. My name is Shauna Nyquist, and it is totally my honor to be a part of this event with all of you, and I'm excited to be the first one to welcome you to this special gathering, no matter where you are, around the country or around the world. Each one of us are a part of this tonight because we've been touched or inspired or challenged or shaped in some way by Telos and its incredible work. And we're excited to celebrate the past and also dream and learn a little bit about the future. So the first thing we're going to do together is take a look back at the extraordinary, groundbreaking, meaningful experiences and events that have shaped the last 10 years of Telos. And then we're going to look forward. Greg and Todd are going to talk with us about the history and also about the dream for the future. And if you, like me, have been shaped and educated and challenged and kind of brought to life and inspired by this incredible organization, by a trip that you went on, or some relationships that you've built, or some things that you've read, or films that you've seen, all related to Telos and its work in the world, I hope that you'll join me in kind of connecting your experience to this bigger community's experience. I hope that as you look back, you feel a sense of gratitude for what you've learned and what you've been able to be a part of. And I hope that maybe you're listening with one ear open, as I will be, for my own possible path with this organization in the future. What's next for me? What's the next connection point for me? What's the next learning step for me? So again, welcome. It is no small thing to have built an organization doing difficult and brave work all around the world to reach the 10-year point. Many organizations start with the best of intentions and never get near a decade of extraordinary, beautiful, meaningful work, and there's so much to celebrate. And there's also so much to look forward to. So thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for taking time out of your day. Thank you for your history with this organization. And we're excited for the future that we're shaping together. So next you're going to hear from Greg and Todd, both looking back and looking forward.
Telos began with an unorthodox idea and an even more unorthodox friendship. I'd been living in Palestine, working as a legal and communications advisor to Palestinian negotiators, and I had what I believed to be an absolutely incredible, outside-the-box idea. I saw a way to build a new American movement. Liberals and conservatives, believers and non-believers, together, fighting not just for equality in Israel-Palestine, but also tackling deep-stuck issues here at home. I saw this multi-faith, multi-partisan movement as the missing link to a just peace in Israel-Palestine. And at its center was an unusual, perhaps overlooked segment of American society, Christians. I know for some of you obvious, for others just totally outside the box. Let me explain. I grew up in San Diego, California, Palestinian Christian family. I knew from an early age just how much Americans impacted the reality on the ground there. We send billions of dollars a year. We shape the entire world's political engagement with Israel, Palestine, and the broader Middle East, whether there's war, whether there's peace in some instances. And we've imported the conflict into our own houses of worship, our communities, our culture, and even our politics. Yet, many Christians who often take such a one-sided approach to this issue had no idea that there are Palestinian Christians. Still today, people will say, when did you convert, Greg? 2,000 years ago? When did you convert? It provides this insight, this cognitive dissonance. No, it's not a conflict about faith, but it provided an in beyond that false binary, to be pro-Israeli as anti-Palestinian and vice versa, that this is a Jewish-Muslim conflict, that this isn't fundamentally about human rights. And so I developed a variety of relationships that led me to this unusual methodology for Telos as a result of engaging in a different way. But none of this could become a reality until Todd and I joined forces.
I first met Greg in Jerusalem in 2004 when I was working at the State Department. It was my first trip to Israel-Palestine, and it was during this awful period called the Second Intifada. Israel was building the barrier that so many of you have seen, and some mutual friends had introduced me to Greg, and I spent the first day driving around East Jerusalem with him and exploring the route of the wall and the impact it was having on Palestinians, especially on Christians and Christian institutions. I'd seen photos and I'd read reports, but I was totally unprepared for the reality I saw that day. And in the week that I spent there, meeting with and learning from Palestinians and Israelis. I grew up in the South, and I spent years involved in Republican politics, including 6 years as the chief of staff to a U.S. senator. I've always taken my Christian faith seriously, and these are the things that actually had shaped my understanding of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. What I saw that day didn't match up with what I thought I knew. From that first visit, I was convinced that America had a national security interest in seeing this conflict resolved. I also saw that the significant role the U.S. plays makes us, in effect, a party to the conflict with both influence and responsibility. But I also saw that we often pursue policies there that make peace harder to achieve because this conflict is a vexing foreign policy challenge that functions more like a domestic political issue. And one of the key drivers of that is people like me, conservative Christians. I went back to DC unable to shake my sense of implication. And over time, I became convinced of the deep need for a different kind of Christian response, one that was grounded in peacemaking and the calling of those who follow Jesus to be agents of healing and reconciliation. But I still didn't know what to do with all this until I had another meeting with Greg.
It was 2008, November, a week after Lehman Brothers failed and the beginning of the last financial crisis. I was having this meeting with Todd in Foggy Bottom, about to tell the senior State Department official about my crazy idea to build a pro-Israeli, pro-Palestinian, pro-peace movement that could bring peace to Israel-Palestine and help heal divisions at home. I went through what I'd been doing over the last year, traveling around the world, weaving this network together. And I told him that there was a unique moment to make this happen right now, that this movement had to begin with some kind of personal experience. The trip, like the one that he had gone on so many years earlier, to get people to really care and to see that we were implicated.
And so we refined and expanded our mission to own that our work was really about forming communities of American peacemakers across these lines of difference, and then equipping them to help reconcile seemingly intractable conflict at home and abroad. Since 2009, we've led nearly 2,000 of you on Telos trips. Pastors, celebrities, lay activists, members of Congress, artists, and people who may not have fame or status, but who know that they have agency and purpose and have decided to do something with it. We've brought Israelis and Palestinians to Washington and to communities around the country, met with members of Congress, convened national gatherings, bringing together religious and secular, progressive and conservative, advocating for a different way of doing politics and building community. And along the way, you've supported the work of Israeli and Palestinian peacemakers. You've helped vulnerable people in moments of crisis. You've told your stories to your friends and families, blogged, preached sermons, made films and photo essays, and written best-selling books like Colin McCann's A Paragon, or at least one of you did, all rooted in mutual flourishing. 11 years into this, we've made important cultural shifts. Pro-Israeli, pro-Palestinian, and pro-peace is a thing in the cities and churches we work in. Churches are discipling their people to be peacemakers. Many of you forged unusual relationships across lines of difference, working together in ways that are necessary to actually change the status quo. We now have a model that is ready for the moment we're living in.
Like Todd said, we're just getting started. The pandemic threw us all, the entire world, for a loop. But it also gave Telos an opportunity to take stock, to really think carefully about what we're doing and why, to experiment with some new programming. And we want to share some of our thinking with you for your feedback over the next few weeks and for your eventual partnership. We know this moment is an unusual moment for the world and for Telos. We know that the principles and practices of radical peacemaking are needed more than ever before. We know we've built up the assets that can actually really lead our communities and potentially our world to a better place. So with you, we'd like to figure out how we can do that together.
Hey, my name is David Gunger, and I'm a songwriter for a band called The Brilliance based in New York City. I also work at Telos. I went on my first Telos trip about 10 years ago when I was invited by my dear friend Aaron Nyquist. And I went on that trip and I went back 4 times. It really made an impact on my life. This song I'm about to sing, actually, I remember singing it at Greg Khalil's family's house in Bet Sahur, looking outside at the beautiful sky and this amazing place surrounded by these amazing people. Tonight, I think of them. I think of my friends in Israel and Palestine, as well as my friends and community here online. Thank you for being with us. This is a song, it's a cover of a song called Which Way Are You Going? Which way are you going? And which side will you be on? Will you stand and watch while all the seeds of hate are sown? Will you stand with those who say, let his will be done? With one hand on the Bible and one hand on the gun. One hand on the Bible and one hand on the gun. Which way are you looking? Is it hard to see? Do you say what's wrong for him is now wrong for me? Lines have changed, we've rearranged. What have we become? All the olive branches turn to spears, and the flowers turn to stone. All the olive branches turn to spears, and the flowers turn to stone. Every day, things are changing. Words once honest turn to lies. People wondering, can you blame them? It's too far to run, too late to hide. And now you turned your back on all the things you used to preach. And now it's let him live in freedom, or only if he lives like me. You walk the streets of righteousness, but you refuse to understand. You say you love the baby, but then you crucify the man. I don't understand. You say you love the baby, but then you crucify the man. You say you love the baby, but then you crucify the man.
I am so excited to introduce you to the next person that you're going to hear from. I kind of pride myself on being a person that doesn't get super starstruck. But I have to tell you that when I met the novelist Colin McCann at a Telos event in Washington, D.C. a couple years ago, I was not in any way cool about it. Colin McCann has written some of my favorite novels ever. Let the Great World Spin is just certainly one of the best New York novels ever written, and one of my personal favorites. And the fact that he is a part of the Telos community and wrote a book about Israel and Palestine is so cool. And I'm so excited for you to get to hear from him. The book, A Paragon, is really, really wonderful. I remember reading just the first section. I only got, probably 10 pages in. I was reading it at a restaurant in New York in December, and 10 pages in, I had to close it and stop and think for a little while about the images and the themes and the way images connected to characters. It's really masterful and beautiful, and the whole book is a wonderful experience that's going to be made into a movie by Steven Spielberg. So, Colin, we are so thankful for your extraordinary giftedness and for giving yourself the years and time and work and energy that it took to make this extraordinary book, to tell this story about this important time in history. So thank you, and please welcome Colin McCann.
I want to thank everybody who's involved with Telos and has been down through the years, and I know it's going to be a spectacular reinvigoration of everything that we do together. And in celebration of that, I wanted to read a very short section of my new novel, A Paragon, which is set in Israel and Palestine. Section 1001. Once upon a time, and not so long ago, and not so far away, Rami Elhanan, an Israeli, a Jew, a graphic artist, husband of Nurit and father of Elik and Guy and Yigal, father too of the late Smadar, travelled on his motorbike from the suburbs of Jerusalem to the Crimson Monastery in the mainly Christian town of Beit Jala, near Bethlehem, in the Judean hills, to meet with Bassam Aramin, a Palestinian, a Muslim, a former prisoner, an activist, born near Hebron, husband of Salwa, father of Arab and Areen and Muhammad and Ahmed and Iba, father too of the late Abir, 10 years old, shot dead by an unnamed Israeli border guard in East Jerusalem, almost a decade after Rami's daughter Smadar, 2 weeks away from 14, was killed in the western part of the city by 3 Palestinian suicide bombers. Bashar Sawala, Youssef Shuli and Tawfiq Yassin from the village of Al-Sariya al-Shamaliya near Nablus in the West Bank, a place of intrigue to the listeners gathered in the red brick monastery perched on the hillside in the mountains of the beloved by the terraced vineyard. In the shadow of the wall, having come from as far apart as Belfast and Kyushu, Paris and North Carolina, Santiago and Brooklyn, Copenhagen and Terezin. On an ordinary day, at the end of October, foggy, tinged with cold, to listen to the stories of Bassam and Rami, and to find within their stories another story, a song of songs, discovering themselves, you and me, in the stone-tiled chapel where we sit for hours, eager, hopeless, buoyed, confused, cynical, complicit, silent, our memories imploding, our synapses skipping in the gathering dark, remembering while listening all of those stories that are yet to be told. So that's in dedication to all of those stories that we all have yet to tell. Thank you again.
Hello from the UK. My name is Marcus Mumford, and it's my pleasure to send a little greeting to this gathering of people who love the work that Telos does as much as I do. And I've been on a couple Telos trips, and I can honestly say they've changed my life. Both the practice of listening that Telos seems to teach, but also the people that Telos have introduced me to has really been an invaluable sort of factor in my life over the last few years, and still very much learning to listen. But on my first trip to Jerusalem, the first person I met was Robbie Damelin, who said, when you listen to my story, you bring dignity to my humanity. And I got the opportunity to sit at her feet along with lots of other people that I've met on trips, and really have so enriched my experience of the world. And through teaching me really to listen rather than speak too much. So I'm going to keep it short. But I'm just sending all my love to you guys. I hope you have a lovely time, and thank you again, and see you soon, I hope.
The work of Telos has meant so much to me. As a young journalist, I met Todd and Greg, and I wanted a deeper understanding of the Middle East politically, theologically, spiritually. I have since then continued to use Telos as a roadmap to understand the world around me and issues that are important to me. And I took a Southern trip about 2 years ago. As someone who is from the South, I didn't really expect to have a lot of revelation on the trip, but it was one of the most profound experiences of my life and something that has shaped me in ways that I'm still kind of trying to understand. I think the beautiful work of Telos is that while we all kind of question how and critique how other people are doing things wrong, the government, the church, political parties, activism, the work of Telos has been for me to turn that question around and say, how can I do better? Where are my implicit biases? How can I see the way that I view the world as potentially harmful to other people around me? And I think unlearning so many things and seeing the world in a new way has been really helpful. And to take ownership of that, for me, has been so key, because it makes me less intimidated of the problem and more eager to be a part of the solution.
Hey everyone, my name is Lydia Fujimura, and I'm so excited to celebrate 10 years of Telos with you all. Ever since my first Telos trip in 2017, my life has been completely different. Understanding peace-building principles has influenced every single area of my life. Telos inspired me to bring peace-building to the place I work, in human resources, by hosting a lunch and learn, in the context of conflict resolution and seeking to understand even when it's difficult. My experiences with Telos also inspired me to pursue volunteer opportunities, like my fellowship with the One America movement that seeks to build societal resilience to polarization. My time with Telos wasn't simply experiential. It completely changed me as a person, the way I view the world, and the way I see people, and I'm forever grateful. Congrats on 10 years, and I can't wait for the next 10 years.
So Telos has changed me by helping me see that peacemaking has absolutely nothing to do with conflict avoidance. I really thought I was a peacemaker because I ran as far as possible from conflict. And as we know, that's not true, that conflict merely highlights the tensions and the injustices that are already present in our society. And it's only when we move towards those things and actually see healing and rectification that we can actually start to see peace flourish. And so that's just changed my perspective in so many ways about conflict. The other thing is that Telos helped me see that peacemaking is a central component of the kingdom of God. That the biblical story is one in which God is always seeking to make peace with humanity, and that has just totally changed how I look at the Bible and how I look at how God is constantly working with humanity. And so ultimately I think these lessons, I hope, have made me a better colleague and a better friend and generally a less crap human being. I still mostly get it wrong when I try and enter into a conflict, but there are those moments where I'm able to channel Jack and Todd and Greg and Dawood and Robbie and Bassam and all our amazing friends that we met on our trips. And so I'm just immensely grateful to Telos for helping me be less crap in my relationships. And so please support Telos and help others be less crap as well.
One of the things I'm most excited about tonight is the way we get to celebrate our community by giving our Telos Peacemakers Award to someone who's been a part of this work since the very beginning. Our Telos Peacemaker is Mary Kay Turner. A lot of you may know Mary Kay from her service on our Telos board for many years. She's also spoken at our conferences. She's been on a number of our trips. In fact, she was one of the first people who was willing to take a chance on what we were doing when she traveled with Greg on the very first Telos trip in February 2010. She's also the president of an organization she helped found called the Holy Land Christian Society, where she's raised well over $1 million to support Christians and Christian institutions in the Holy Land. As I thought about how to best introduce her, a story came to mind. I first met her almost 20 years ago when I was working in the State Department with her husband John. Mary Kay was teaching at a Catholic school in Arlington, and a young Palestinian was one of her students. This young woman invited Mary Kay to go to Bethlehem to meet her family there and learn about the challenges they were facing as the wall was being built separating Bethlehem from Jerusalem. This was during the Second Intifada, and when Mary Kay told John, who was an Assistant Secretary of State at the time, that she was going on this trip, John told her that as his wife, the State Department would not let her go to the West Bank. She told him that she wasn't going as his wife. She was going as a nun with 2 Catholic priests, and that's exactly what she did. She even wore a nun's habit. She spent several days there meeting people, hearing stories, taking photos, collecting information, and eventually came back armed with a report that she began to share with members of Congress and journalists and even people like me. In fact, it was Mary Kay who convinced me to go to Israel-Palestine for the first time. She is one of my dearest friends, one of my favorite people in the world. She gives tirelessly and cares passionately. It's her kind of tenacity and dedication, her willingness to use her time, energy, and resources in the cause of peace that makes her the recipient of our Telos PEACEMAKERS Award. Congratulations, Mary Kay.
I am so grateful to receive this award from a community I so respect and believe in. I first traveled to the Holy Land probably 20 years ago at the prompting of a Palestinian student and the Christians living there, and I've been committed to that all of this time because the Christians in the Holy Land really inspire me to work for peace. I've worked with Greg and Todd now even before they started Telos, and have been so honored to be a part of it from the very beginning. I've been so encouraged to watch Telos and the way it's grown, and to see how many successes there are in this community of peacemakers. The work and mission of Telos is critical on all sides in changing the way Americans engage in the Holy Land, and no one does it better than Telos. I'm more committed now than ever to seeing that Americans understand that we need to secure the peace and dignity of all the people living in the Holy Land. I'm kind of reminded of the words of Mother Teresa, who said, there's no peace if we don't belong to each other. And if we've forgotten to belong to each other, there can be no peace. And God did not call us to be successful in this, just faithful. Every day, Telos reminds us of this, that we belong to each other. Thank you again for this great opportunity to share my thoughts and what I believe is the mission of Telos and why it has made me so proud of it.
I am a child of parents who were very involved in the civil rights movement. I am a pastor and a bishop who has been in a lot of political fights across Mississippi and beyond, and I understand how tough and hard it is to make systemic change. But I've learned something. I've learned that first, no significant work ever occurs by one person alone. It always takes people coming together. When we as peacemakers, when we as people who love justice will come together, it makes everything possible. And in this Kairos moment in this country, then even more, it tells me that wherever there is injustice, as Dr. Martin Luther King says, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere, then that change is possible. My brothers and sisters who are peacemakers out there, thank you for what you do. Get with others, stretch your boundaries, stretch the people that you will work with. Get with others, because as we come together and join our forces, it makes everything possible and every injustice will fall. Believe it.
My introduction to Telos came through an invitation of a friend to attend the very first Telos conference. I had no idea who Telos was or even what a Telos trip was all about. But what I do know is I left that time with more questions and more curiosity. That conference led to more conversations, significant friendships, and life-changing trips. As a result of all of that, I learned the significance and the power of story. How do we listen to people on two different sides of a conflict or issue and hold both of their truths without automatically judging that one is right and one is wrong? As a result of all of this and other trips that I took to the Middle East, I co-founded a movement called Amplify Peace with Danielle Strickland. Now there are 3 words that we use that really inform our work. They are listen, learn, and live. How do we posture ourselves as listeners and learners to really live differently? Well, we are so honored to be able to partner and join Telos as we continue to move forward into the future together. And I would literally follow these guys anywhere in the world. And in fact, I have, and I do. It is a privilege to be able to join forces together as we create a better story and a better future.
I first encountered Telos in 2017 at their conference in Washington, D.C. During that time, I got to hear John Paul Lederach speak about affecting positive change and to start within your sphere of influence. At the time, I was at a loss as to what I could do to help make a positive impact in the world, especially during a very divisive moment for our nation. And that provided wonderful advice for me. Back home, I was able to collaborate with 2 dear friends and colleagues to create a series called A Year of Courageous Conversations. In it, we seek to actively explore how to foster greater inclusion and belonging with an eye towards diversity and equity and inclusion. This series started in 2019 and wrapped up this June. It was warmly received, and I'm thrilled to say over 1,000 people have had some kind of contact with it in one way or another. We plan to have a second season, and I'm also thrilled to say that Todd Dethridge is going to be one of our guest speakers for September. We hope to build a courageous community, and through that, we also hope to bring this courageous community, at least some of them anyway, to a Telos trip to the American South, where we can continue to actively learn together. One of the most important learnings that I've taken away from the Telos trips to both Israel, Palestine, and the American South is how to bear witness to people's different lived experiences with compassion and curiosity. These are qualities and values that we try to integrate into our series, and that I have personally taken away in my life and try to apply day to day. So Telos, thank you so much for the work that you do. You've been a huge inspiration, the entire family, both here and abroad, and I am honored to be able to carry on the work here in my hometown.
Because of Telos, even in the fear, frustration, and great sadness of the now, I have an embodied hope. A hope I've experienced by intentionally practicing simple, hard things in the small community of peacemakers that I'm a part of, inspired by Telos and called Company T. We meet at the intersection of our faith, our gender identity and sexuality, and our culture and ethnicity to be truly loved and fully known. It's hopeful to see and honor the image of the Creator in another without fear, and it's freeing to allow the same in myself. Because of Telos, I'm knowing better and doing a little better every day. Peace, salam, shalom. Thank you.
In 2008, a friend of mine challenged me to learn more about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict by visiting with Palestinian Christians in the West Bank. And so I did. Seeing their daily lives under occupation was a shocking and very sad awakening for me. And yet when I went back home, I could not adequately communicate what I had seen to other people. Also, the more I learned about the complexity of the conflict, the more I realized that I was way over my head in terms of trying to understand the history and the politics of the region, and I needed someone to teach me. Fortunately, in 2009, on a trip to Jerusalem, I met Todd Dethridge and then later Greg Khalil. They had just started Telos, and as we talked, I realized that I'd found the teachers that I need. Through Todd and Greg, I also began to meet other people on the ground who quickly became my heroes. Early on, I met Robbie Damlin. When I heard the story of the tragic loss of her son David, and then saw her relentless commitment to building peace in his name, I knew I would never be the same. And I was right. Also on that trip, I met a young man from Breaking the Silence whose experiences as an Israeli soldier lend a grim credibility to many of the things I'd already heard. I was on a bus in Silwan when I heard him speak, and in that moment, I experienced, I guess, a kind of calling to help many more people hear his and Robbie's stories, and the stories of so many other Israelis and Palestinians doing the hard, daily, deep work of making peace. I'm so grateful that a decade of Telos trips provided the vehicle for so many of us to do just that, to be challenged and inspired and called to action by true heroes. I'm very pleased that right now we get to hear directly from some of those very men and women, our heroes, that we've all come to know and love.
I think the whole journey with Telos has been such an interesting experiment for both sides. It has been so beneficial to the parent circle, and also for me personally. I've met the most extraordinary people along the way, and there have been so many opportunities to tell stories of our lives and to tell people about the work that we do in the parent circle. But apart from all of that, there's been a friendship and a kind of symbiotic way of working together that is quite extraordinary. Both Todd and Greg have played major parts in introductions to people who have made a huge difference in the image of the parent circle. I mean, if we think about Aperigon as one of the latest examples, how much exposure the message through Bassam and Rami has spread all over the world just by Colum's wonderful book. The introductions to people who have then donated money to us. Mumford was a huge gift. I never imagined myself talking in the Albert Hall in London to a completely full house of people and being interviewed by Mumford. And just this way of wanting to give us a platform all the time. Todd helped us so much in Congress and in the Senate to try and promote our message and to get people to understand how important it is to look at the fact that there is hope and that there can be reconciliation. And how many friends like that do we have? We've met, I don't know how many groups I've spoken to since I've been involved, which was right from the beginning. But I also made such a lot of friends along the way. Also, we met a wonderful group from Chicago who then invited us to come and speak in their community. And how could we have had so many introductions to speak in churches, to speak in their conference, if it hadn't been for this wonderful relationship that we have? And what we can give is a sense of hope to people who come here, a sense of them being able to recognize that forgiveness and reconciliation and non-violence can also be part of the lexicon of the Middle East.
There are many people who are coming to visit the Holy Land, probably more than 4 million a year, and there are many organizations who are bringing those groups to see the country, to listen to its story, etc. But there are few who are bringing people to see and to meet the living stones. And this is what Telos is doing, is bringing people to come and see and then go back home and tell the people's story. And this is what we are experiencing here at the Tent of Nations. When people are coming through Telos, they come to see, to realize, to know what's happening here, and also to get inspired by our story. So thank you so much for all your support and solidarity for the Tent of Nations. We appreciate that very much.
Hello, my name is Ainka Jackson, and I'm the Executive Director of the Selma Center for Nonviolence, Truth, and Reconciliation in the historic Selma, Alabama. The Selma Center was created to partner with institutions to eliminate violence in all its forms by bridging divides and building the beloved community. Our partnership with Telos has been so beneficial to me personally and to the Selma Center. My trip to the Holy Land with Telos was truly life-changing and allowed me to see that my judgmentalness and self-righteousness were a part of the problem. Their Southern trips have helped people to see the division and injustices in our own country, and through our Beyond Divide and Conquer racial equity training and our nonviolence conflict reconciliation training, people have been able to see how we can be a part of the solution. The partnership between Telos and the Selma Center for Nonviolence was created for such a time as this, to reimagine and rebuild in order to create the beloved community. Congratulations, Telos.
Got a chance to go to Israel, Palestine, and got a chance to understand that conflict and the challenge, and I really loved their approach. And we had a very similar approach with as with Reimagine. And what I really liked about this is that Telos is honed in this experiential learning deal with these trips and narrative and how they change. And you know, we at Reimagine, we have an approach that's very similar to theirs, but we don't do experiential learning. We do other things. And it's been really great when we talked either in Israel or afterwards. I can't remember the details, but we partner up and said, like, hey, let's try to create this experience for the South. And that has been such a rich experience over the last, 2-3 years. And I'm just really glad to be a partner with Telos. I'm really glad that Telos exists, that Telos creates these experiences that allow folks to have convergent moments, to be peacemakers. One of the things that we need in this world more than anything are more peacemakers.
The ancient Greeks had two concepts of time, chronos and kairos. Chronos is chronological time, the ticks on a clock. Kairos is qualitative time, the idea that some ticks are different than all others. The stars align, and in those moments, only those moments, transformative change is possible. But only if we, with great effort, do our part. This is a kairos moment. The tectonic plates are shifting. Systemic change is happening now. Our world will look very different years from now based on the decisions we make today. We need to figure out how to best use this kairos moment for our communities, for our world, and for Telos.
The work we have to do to change America's relationship to Israel-Palestine is incredibly hard. We all know that. But we also know it's critical. And the emergence of the new civil rights movement reminds us that we have so much still to do here at home toward racial equity and a more just society. If these old cycles are to be disrupted and real transformation is to happen, the work of Telos and of peacemakers like you are a key to the change we so desperately need. I've been thinking of it this way. When our children ask us what we did during this kairos moment, let's tell them that we saw ourselves as responsible, that we sacrificed power, reputation, and resources, that we joined together to speak up for Palestinians and Israelis when our own government sought to deepen injustice and make the work of peace harder, that we work for racial equity here at home so that our children can inherit a fairer and more just world, a world of mutual flourishing.
Today, peacemaking is countercultural. We can speak truth to power, but we can't yet hold power to account. If we want our leaders, our institutions, our politicians to take meaningful steps to support mutual flourishing, then we need to build that kind of influence. Over the last 11 years, we've built a model that can grow us from a marginal and motley group to a mainstream force that can actually hold our leaders and our neighbors to account, to promote these values of mutual flourishing.
For the Christians who are part of our Telos family, we could help dozens of new communities embrace peacemaking is essential to being a follower of Jesus. What would it look like in 2025 if churches were discipling their people to be peacemakers? If white Christians were listening to and learning from Black and brown Christians? If those with affluence and power were letting go to allow the marginalized to thrive? If individuals were being personally transformed and then working to redeem corrupt and unjust systems of power and oppression.
Over the past months, we've been experimenting. Even when travel resumes, Telos will be a very different organization. We need to be positioned not only to grow this model that we've built, but to help our community organize, to joyously take effective action to promote mutual flourishing in the world.
We have a new strategic plan, and it's bold and ambitious. It's designed to take radical embodied peacemaking to the center of our culture. Tonight, we're excited to share the headlines with you. We know that nothing has the lasting impact of trips, and we're ready to travel as soon as possible. But even with a significant delay, we expect to have more than 2,000 new alumni, a veritable peace army, in 5 years' time.
And yet, the biggest investment that Telos is making in the coming years is not in our trips, it's in you. It's helping to build an effective, organized, joyous movement. We see 3 strategic investments in this area, the first of which is storytelling. Like, everything begins and ends with story. It's how we see ourselves, it's how we see the world, it's what motivates us, it's what makes us scared. In fact, peacemaking at its core is about relationships so that we can see a story much larger than ourselves. Enough cannot be said about the importance of story in building human relationship and ultimately effective human movement. Specifically, we're launching a new podcast right now, Undaunted, Conversations with Radical Peacemakers. High quality production by our own David Gungor with world-class interviews. Season 1 is almost a wrap. It's going to be released later this summer. Trust me, you won't want to miss this one. We're also working on a new platform called Telos University. Telos University will allow you as an individual and your peacemaking cohort, your table, to dive so deeply into the principles and practices of peacemaking, to understand what they are, to develop skills from advocacy to storytelling, to dive very deeply into our issue areas from Israel-Palestine to racial justice to South Africa, Northern Ireland, and Puerto Rico's status. And we haven't abandoned the practice that many of you Telos insiders are familiar with, which is supporting a lot of creatives in the development of new stories to heal the world. So be on the lookout for more best-selling novels, award-winning films, incredible sermons and short videos from many of you already in our network.
Second, and most importantly, we're investing in people. Many of you have already applied to become Telos ambassadors and Telos table hosts. Like the trip, the new table is a core program. It's where we not only build community and have difficult conversations, but it's a place of action. It's where we continue to learn, to plan, and to commit to doing things together. Telos will be training many of you to be facilitators and organizers so that you can bring the principles and practices of radical peacemaking to your communities, so that you can better love your neighbors, build diverse relationships, listen to understand, give voice to the vulnerable, and work to create justice and equity for people on the margins.
Finally, we're investing in action. The whole point of Telos is to invite us into a conversation and a way of being where we can truly embody our values. How can we credibly say we believe something if it doesn't change our behavior when we know that's not the way the world currently is? So we've got to take action. Now, a lot of you have been so active, I feel a little odd by even making this point. You've changed your entire life's trajectory based on your trips and experiences with Telos and have created incredible impact on the ground in the Middle East, volunteered for months on end, created new projects. I don't mean to dismiss any of that, but what I mean to say is that where we as Telos have failed is we've failed in coalescing this into coordinated complementary action. And for that to happen, we need to invest in that as an organization. That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to work with you, our Telos ambassadors and table hosts, in driving coordinated learning and complementary action, but we're also doing something more. We're investing in an in-house advocacy unit. Look, we all know, if part of this community, politics is not the whole answer, but it's a big part of the answer. Systemic change won't happen without political change. So we're going to help guide you through this process as we develop deeper relationships with political representatives and also like-minded organizations who've been in the trenches for years and who could use some new wind and support from communities and voices just like ours.
We're also expanding our work into other issue areas. A renewed civil rights movement here at home has made our investment in developing relationships and a trip experience in the American South all the more timely and important. We're ready to more formally launch our new program on racial equity, which has been created in partnership with experts and community leaders. This includes a pilgrimage through the South that widens the aperture on our American story while engaging a current, still unjust reality.
Friends, this is a Kairos moment for our world and also for Telos. We need to marshal great energy to do everything we can to take advantage of this moment today, to resist annexation, to stand with our Palestinian and Israeli brothers and sisters and support them as they become even more vulnerable, regardless of what happens with the politics of annexation. To stand proudly with our Black brothers and sisters in their enduring and seemingly endless quest for racial justice. And we also need to keep our eyes on the prize, which is lasting, systemic change and ultimately reconciliation. One opportunity we have in this moment is to build real movement that can consistently hold our leaders to account, that can consistently inject a non-polarized yet radically critical way of engaging the world towards mutual flourishing into our culture, that can consistently tackle these seemingly intractable justice issues that plague not just human hearts, but the systems that we build. We have that opportunity right now to coalesce this movement and to set it on the right path.
Over the next several weeks, we will be making a bigger ask than we've ever made before. But it's built on the work of the last 11 and a half years, and it's the fruit of this unusual time in which we've had a season to dream again and to work like crazy. And while we've been doing that, the world has been changing in both worrisome and hopeful ways. In the coming weeks, we'll be mailing and emailing copies of this plan to everyone in our network. Our ask is that when you receive it, you take the time to read it and to schedule a call to talk with us about what your role might be. It's an audacious vision, but one we know is possible for a world in which peacemaking is normalized and peacemakers are active in addressing challenges at home and abroad. You've done so much to build and shape our work up to this point. Let's reimagine and rebuild a better world together.
Thank you for joining us tonight. It has been a gift to be together and to share stories and continue learning and connect with this amazing community. I want to especially thank the Telos team, both in the US and in Jaffa. And in particular, I want to thank and honor Todd and Greg for the work you've done. We have learned from you. We respect you. We believe in the work that you're doing, and we're so grateful to get to be in community with you, walking with you along this journey. I want to close by reading a benediction. Father John O'Donohue was an Irish Catholic priest and poet and mystic, and this is his blessing on peace. As the fever of day calms toward twilight, may all that is strained in us come to ease. We pray for all who suffered violence today. May an unexpected serenity surprise them. For those who risk their lives each day for peace, may their hearts glimpse providence at the heart of history. That those who make riches from violence and war might hear in their dreams the cries of the lost. That we might see through our fear of each other a new vision to heal our fatal attraction to aggression. That those who enjoy the privilege of peace might not forget their tormented brothers and sisters. That the wolf might lie down with the lamb. That our swords be beaten into plowshares, and no hurt or harm be done along this holy mountain. Amen.
There comes a time in every life that we don't have the strength to move. In the night, I find a light and know that I could never do this alone. Ooh, I'm holding on to you. I'm holding on to you now. 'Cause everything I know tells me this is true. I can't do this alone. Well, there comes a fight in every life that we don't have the strength to lose. Lay down my pride, I find that I could never own the truth alone. Ooh, holding on to you. I'm holding on to you now. Oh, 'cause everything I know tells me this is true. I can't do this alone. Ooh, I am giving up. I am giving up all my love. All my love, I'm giving up all my love, holding on to you. I'm holding on to you now, 'cause everything I know tells me this is true. I can't do this alone.